This god-awful depressing space was the office in the pole barn when I purchased the property here, and I just could not live with the smell of mouse feces and the depressing low light and this horrible OSB sheeting everywhere. So I tore out all of the sheeting and all of the insulation. I found mice nests and even a mummified frog. So I discarded about half of the insulation. Then I bought a picture window off of Craigslist, transported it in my SUV with the seats removed, framed the rough opening in the wall before installing the window, and then moving on to getting drywall in the space. And this is where I left off the project last time and where we're going to pick it up in this episode. So I've decided to do something to fix the floor before I finish the wall. That whole floor has fallen away to the point where there's like an inch gap here underneath. So I dug out the riprap here, and I've got a new 3-ton jack slid under there, and this handle is quite long, and it's taking all the force, so I imagine I've got just about all 3 tons lifting on that at the moment. Now the distance from here to there is like 5 feet. Outside the pole barn, that jack is sitting right about there, so closer to that post than to the corner where all of the actual movement has occurred. So what I need to do is get the jack closer to that corner, but there's all this concrete in the way. So that's what I've been doing over here. I've gotten that much broken off using just this, baby sledgehammer. But looking at this concrete, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, because I think he already tried to do what I'm trying to do, and that is jacked up the floor inside there and then filled underneath with concrete to support this corner. So in order to redo this job the correct way, I need to get rid of all of this concrete. So I need to go rent a jackhammer or something like that, and I need to chip away all the concrete that he poured so that as I lift the slab underneath there, it will not push on the sill plate, because if I lift the sill plate, it's going to buckle the siding here, and that's not good. So it's just so much work to undo his project here just so that I can get the floor level inside. I'm thinking the better idea is just to pour some self-leveling compound into this corner and lift the floor by adding more material inside. That's going to be a lot less work than trying to get rid of all this concrete on the outside. So I was going to fix the floor before finishing this wall, and the reason is I needed to be able to see what I was doing. There's a sort of high water mark where the concrete used to sit on that lowest girt, or I don't know what you want to call it, sill plate, whatever that board is down there. And I also want to be able to kind of stick my hand in here from both sides and just see when the slab touched the bottom of this wall, but that's not important anymore. Now that I'm going to be adding material here on the inside, I'm going to finish this wall first, which means finally, let's get the insulation all the way up and over this wall, all the way across the ceiling to the far wall of the pole barn. And to do that, I'm going to use a technique called banded insulation. It actually has its usage usually in giant steel buildings. Normally, there's a whole system that you buy from the company that sells you the insulation. They also sell you the bands. But obviously, I just bought my insulation at Rural King. Not Rural King, I bought it at Menards here in the Midwest, and so it didn't come with any banding. Where am I going to get steel banding? Well, the answer is from a shipping or an office supply company. So they use this half-inch strapping or banding to wrap around like wooden crates. Now I was able to get 3,000 feet of that. I'm only going to use like 1,000 feet. And it came in this roll. And this thing, oh goodness, it weighs like 110 pounds. So here's a short piece of it, and getting this attached to the trusses up there in the ceiling is pretty straightforward. I just take my screw here and start it with a hammer. So hammering my screws makes a lot of sense, right? But that gets it so where the threads will bite into the metal, and then I just gotta strip my screw out on camera. But you can see that's going to be held quite well. Now, I estimate that each of these straps, even with a hole punched in it because of the screw, will probably hold hundreds of pounds. So the strap itself could hold up the entire roll of insulation, a single strap. And because I'm going to have 20 straps going across the roof, across the ceiling, there's going to be no issue with strength. So the distance in between the posts, the bays here are 9 feet wide, but they don't sell 9-foot with insulation. The best I was able to do was 6 foot and 3 foot combined. So I'm going to have one roll of this and one roll of that in every bay here in the pole barn. The backing material on these rolls is this tarpaulin-like material. It's pretty robust. You can see the fiber reinforcement. It's got paper on this side, and I assume the plasticized side here is the water-resistant or waterproof side, but it's not indestructible. It is fairly easy to tear, so I need to be somewhat cautious during installation. On this first bay, from inside of the truss to inside of the wall is 8 feet 6 inches, which means that the 3 foot wide roll of insulation needs to cut down by 6 inches here on one side. So I'm hanging all of these black metal straps up there in the rafters, which means I'm going up and down the ladder all the time. You can see I can maybe get to those two, and then I gotta move the ladder and get to those two. And the tools that I'm using are this hammer and this impact driver. So I've been carrying them up and down the ladder in one hand, and of course I started off with a handful of screws here stuck into my pocket, so that worked. That's how I installed all of the straps, but not ideal. I'd like to have the ability to hang these on my person so I can use my hands to do the actual work instead of carrying tools. To that end, I went to the big box store and got what I thought was going to be the ideal pouch, but man, every time these products, the rock bottom price, designed in China, they just don't work. They were designed by somebody who doesn't do carpentry, and it shows. It could be very useful if the pocket here and the hammer loop were switched. The majority of the population, right-handed, you're gonna have this bag on your left because you're gonna go screw after screw, so you're constantly gonna be reaching there. That's the whole point of bags, for the most part, is to hold your fasteners. So if I have that on the left hand and I try to put my hammer here, I'm having to reach across my body, if I can even reach it, to get to my hammer. So if I'm holding something above my head, I've got this in between my legs, I'm holding this thing here, and I'm trying to to do what I gotta do. So that's not working. Not only that, this is designed for this is like more of a finish carpenter's belt. Yet the loop there for your hammer is for a framing hammer. So I can do that, where the hammer can just fall right on through the loop. Most of the time I'm okay and it catches, but yeah, the possibility exists. So that hammer loop should be smaller. Now, if I try to use it on my right side, I can get to the hammer pretty easily, but now, once again, I'm trying to reach across my body to try to get to those screws. It's really awkward, and it's especially awkward and bad when I'm precariously perched on the ladder trying not to fall and kill myself. So I tried to use this, it didn't work out. Oh yeah, let's talk about the pencil placement. It's right there, so if you try to go, you're catching your pencil to try to hang your hammer. Not ideal. So I could use my framing bags. Of course, I was a professional house framer in my 20s, and I have these heavy bags here. These are my trusty old 20-year-old bags. I love them. I love the layout of them for framing houses. Totally too heavy, not the right tool for this job. So what am I gonna do? How am I gonna solve this problem? Well, I own an industrial sewing machine. I have a bag startup company, which I never work on anymore, but yeah, so I've been able to prototype bags and I have all the materials. So look at what I made. It's a hook for the screw gun and a hook for the hammer, which is a little bit smaller. That's that loop. So yeah, I can do all the things. So I now have a lightweight bag setup ready for this job, specifically for this job, and I have 100 more straps to get up there, so let's get to work. Now these two center ones, you can see they're just sort of hanging here. There's not enough of a gap. It would be hard to stuff the insulation up. So these are gonna go in after the fact. So the job that I have to do now is unroll this and try to pull it up into the rafters. Here I am on top of the motorhome. You can see in the office there, I've got the insulation all the way down that wall, all the way up and over this side, climbing up and down this ladder to try to deal with the insulation. Got my 2x4 propped across right here. And the current job is to screw these bands in. But you can see that the insulation is pillowing down. So as I try to pull these bands tight from this end using like pliers or something, I can't quite get it tight enough. It's very fiddly. So I'm trying to like unpillow it at the same time as I'm wrestling with the weight. And it's a tremendous challenge. It's taking me hours and hours, and well, it's still worth it. Because if you think about it, it was going to be like $12,000, maybe like $14,000 to get spray foam insulation on the inside of this whole pole barn. And that spray foam insulation would be married to this 50-year-old metal siding. With this insulation, I can still replace the siding at a later date. It'll all just strip right off the outside and the insulation stays put right where it's at. So this allows the building to be upgraded, and it saves me 2/3, so like $8,000. So it makes sense that this is such a struggle to get this insulation in when you realize that it would be an $8,000 bill to do it the easy way. So it's just a struggle that I have to do. Let's get back to it. Remember these Sansi lights that the company sent me? There's similar lights here already installed. They're not as bright, and the color is more like white. There's the Sansi light there. So this is a much like warmer, nicer color. I need to get 4 more of these. With all the reflectance off the white tarpaulin material, the lighting in here is going to be pretty great. So all of the banding and the insulation is installed on this half of the barn, which means there's insulation behind this whole wall, and it's time to put the drywall up. But what should be a straightforward job of cut the ends off of these sheets of drywall and just stick them up is anything but straightforward. So look at these sistered 2x4s here, and you can see the joint in the wall. You're not supposed to sister 2x4s over. You're not supposed to have a joint all the way through there. You want to stagger things. Your double top plate, even your sill plate should be staggered, but he's got walls butting into walls, and this isn't the only one. There's another one down here in the same situation. But if I start from this wall here and go every 4 feet, what's going to happen is my drywall seam is going to fall directly over that break in the framing. So the only thing holding that wall from movement and everything will be the mud and the tape. Very, very bad. So my solution to this problem is going to be to run the drywall sheet from this stud here over the double stud and then ending up there. But because the tape is hooked over that drywall stud, it should be right here to 4 feet. So we are off by 1/2 inch here, and if I move the tape up high, we're off by almost 3/4 inch. So that means I have to move studs. How ridiculous. Making the wonky framing even worse is the fact that this whole end of the building has sort of, drooped and collapsed a little bit with the floor. So my walls are now parallelograms, and that means I've got to cut my drywall sheets in parallelograms. Got the persuader here, and he's going to talk to this stud and convince him to move over a little bit. There's the original line where the stud was, but obviously it needs to be more this way. So now, from the edge of the drywall, which is dead center in the middle of that stud, we are pretty much dead center in the middle of this stud. Put a couple of toenails in here for good measure. It's pretty much 4 feet to the edge of this stud, about 1/4 inch off the edge, so it needs to be a 1/2 inch over. And there's not enough room in the gap to swing the persuader and get any movement on the stud. It's funny that the gap here is too wide because I just moved this stud over by about 1/2 inch already, so his framing is just terrible. Really, really bad. Got my DeWalt 20-volt lithium-ion battery and this 3D printer pen battery adapter that I made. You can see, that whole funkiness. And it's attached to my Milwaukee 18-volt. Geez, I got this in like 2003, 2004 probably, when I used to do commercial finish carpentry, and it's still going strong with the new battery technology. So let's cut this stud. So this is the backside of the 2x4, those 2 toenails that I put in here a few minutes ago. And yeah, they blew through the back. I didn't get my aim quite right. And it is possible to toenail by hand, but it's very difficult, and it never comes out as tight or as good as when you use a nail gun. And so I got a new toy here. This is a battery operated nail gun. This is the first functional, nice, first functional nail that I ever used with it. So that's pretty good. And that's what we're gonna use over here now to do the stud that needs to be moved. Well, this is the most echoey space ever now, and it's time for me to get to work putting all of the screws in. Currently, all the sheets are just tacked up with a few screws, so I need to put the screws on schedule, and then it's time for mudding. Mixing up some of this quick set 45-minute mud here. So this batch of quick set is just to kind of get the remaining of the large gaps. You can see this is a butt joint. So the factory edge of the drywall, like right there, perfectly straight, and it's tapered. It's kind of like indented, ready to receive mud. But when you butt joint the ends together, they're the same height. So I like to carve them off at 45 degrees and yeah, fill it with the quick set, because this stuff doesn't shrink. I'm pretty much done with the mudding here in the office. Even here on the windowsill, it's looking pretty nice. God, I love that view. I wonder how much work I'm gonna get done when I can stare at that instead of at the computer screen. Anyway, it's been pretty hot and pretty humid out there, so I've been using the portable AC unit here, and you can see I've got the door sort of propped open so the AC vent can kind of go out there. And this is an old comforter that I got at a secondhand store, and I use that as like a moving blanket, and it's working great to sort of seal off the office. Also, this unit has a drying, like a dehumidifying function. And so I've been leaving that on overnight, and it's been drying the applications of mud. There was one night that I didn't leave it on and things didn't get dry. Moments like this and that are so funny because you can see the rust marks left behind because I'm using non-stainless steel tools. Well, we're making good progress here in the echo chamber. You can see I've got paint on all the walls, a little bit of touch-up left to do, but yeah, that's looking good. So it's time to address the floor. There is the crack, you guys can see it goes all the way across the floor. And originally I thought the problem was that the slab had cracked right there and just sort of fallen away to that corner. So that, I always knew that was the low point. And I could see that gap, which I filled with foam. So I thought, hey, I just need to sort of fill this corner in. And to that end, I went and bought 6 bags of this self-leveling compound and also the primer to get it to adhere to the floor, along with some sand. I thought maybe I could use the sand as just sort of a filler there in the corner where it's really deep, so I wasn't spending as much money on self-leveler. This stuff costs $30 a bag, which is quite expensive, but the real problem is that you have to mix it and pour it in 5 minutes. So I'd have to get that entire floor poured in 5 minutes. How am I going to do that when I have to mix this bag by bag in a bucket? I'm not set up. You really need a professional when you're doing a large area. You need a professional to do this job. So self-leveling is not the answer here. I'll keep the 2 bags of sand, but I'm going to return all the expensive self-leveler. I've got the laser level here, casting a line across the wall. This corner here is the high spot, measuring just about 35 inches. Down here at the low spot, we're measuring 36 1/4, meaning this corner right here is 1 1/4 inches lower than that corner over there. All right, the floor has been mopped nice and clean, and I'm ready to roll on some of this concrete bonding adhesive. This is just latex, pretty much the same thing as latex paint, just without the dye. It's been about 4 hours since I painted the bonding agent onto the floor here, and you can see where I laid the paint on, it's kind of thick, it's still very much wet. Even here where it looks dry, if I step, you can hear my feet are still sticking to it. So Yeah, I think I'm going to give it another hour with the dehumidifier pulling the moisture out of the air in the room. All right, here are the supplies. I've got 16 bags of sand. There's 10 and there's 6 bags there. And then 4 bags of Portland cement. Those are 100-pound bags, and the sand comes in 50-pound bags. I need a 2-to-1 mixture where it's 2 parts sand, 1 part Portland cement. So I'm going to do a half bag of Portland cement to 2 bags of sand. So that means I will be doing 8 batches, and I'm going to mix the batches up here in this concrete mixing tray. I haven't mixed concrete like this since like 2005 when I was in the Navy getting trained as a CB engineering aide for how to do concrete break tests, both sort of explosive compression tests as well as tensile tests. So yeah, it's a throwback to my Navy government training, but this is, I think, the cheapest, best way to do it instead of renting a big concrete mixer. I mean, this is a fair amount of concrete, but you know, let's do it the hard way. Let's do it the manual way and save some money. Mix up your dry ingredients first before adding the water. So my first batch here is a little soupy. I'm just going to pour this out and make my next batch a little bit dry and sort of mix it in on the floor because I don't have enough room in the tray here to add any more mixture. And next time I dump the tray, I'm going to have to be more careful of the splatter on the wall. This batch is a lot better. As far as consistency goes, that's what I'm going to aim for in the future. All right, from there to there is good so far, and the way I'm leveling this is that I have the laser level set up over there on its own little shelf, so I can leave that there as I'm working. I can just let it run out of batteries and leave it right where it's at. So I've marked a line in pencil, and you can see I'm a little tiny bit low right there, about maybe a little bit more than a 1/16. And over here I'm pretty much right on. You can see the base of this is just a big foot that floats on top. And that's how I'm getting this whole pad level using just that little hand trowel right there from my tiling toolkit. So that is 2 bags of Portland cement and 6 bags of sand, which is half of the material which I had bought to do the whole job. So clearly I miscalculated somehow. Anyway, it's 10 o'clock at night, so I'm gonna call it quits and finish this tomorrow. Here's my dry ingredients all mixed up and flattened out, and the level is a little bit higher than what it's gonna be once I add the water, so it's gonna drop just a little bit in volume. Yeah, see how much lower it is there on the side rail? So we lose a lot of volume when we add the water. I had the AC running in here all night, but you know, I've been in and out of that door. It's probably 85 degrees, but with the humidity, it feels like 100 degrees in here. I am drenched in sweat. It's like I just jumped out of the pool. I did get my hair wet to try to help, but because of the humidity, there's no evaporation happening, so I'm not really cooling off, I'm just wet. And you can see I've got this really rough finish going on. Really not nice to the touch or whatever, but this is the subfloor, and you'll never even know because the foam underneath the actual flooring will make up the difference. Using the flathead shovel here to just sort of shave off the high points. You see right there, there's a sort of a mountain. Not anymore, knocks it right down. This is a concrete mixing hoe as compared to a garden hoe, and you can tell because it's got these holes cut out to allow the slurry, the concrete slurry, to pass through and get mixed more easily. Now, these sharp corners here are problematic in the tray, so I may regret this, but I'm gonna round those corners off using the grinder here. See, the rounded corners on the hoe now match the tray. Who needs to go to CrossFit when you're leveling concrete floors by hand? It's a seriously good workout. So I got this nursery, planting all-purpose sand, and it's wet. You can see the moisture content there in the bag. This one's like 44 pounds, whereas this stuff here, Quikrete brand, 50 pounds, comes in a nicer bag, and this is what you're meant to mix with your, Portland cement to make a good mortar cement mix. And we're looking at similar weight. This is a nice little time saver. I've got this like mixing paddle here on the end of my drill, and I'm just using it to pre-mix the dry ingredients, dry because that sand is pretty wet. But yeah, this really does help speed things up. I filled up this bag with the wet sand. You can see how it clumps, so that's definitely wet. And this is an unopened bag of the dry sand, the stuff that you're meant to buy. And I'm gonna say that height-wise, we're looking at about an inch taller here. So that's a significant amount of volume, but not terrible, considering our mixture ratio can go from 1 part Portland cement to 2 parts sand, all the way up to 3 parts sand. So there's definitely room in there as far as the mixture goes to accommodate the cheaper sand. And considering the fact that this cost $5 per bag and this was $3.50 per bag, that is a massive price savings to go with the garden sand, the wet stuff here. And I haven't done the science, but I'm gonna guess that structurally speaking, we're not gonna see too much of a difference between these two sands. Certainly nothing that matters for this leveling application where I'm using it. I've had the AC unit running in there for 3 days now, drying out the air inside of the office since the last pour, since the last bit of like leveling cement pour that I did. Now the Portland cement plus sand, call it a mortar mix. Some of those batches were really soupy, which means there's a lot of extra water. So there's a certain amount of water that gets used up in the chemical reaction to turn the lye, or whatever it is, the chemical reaction that hardens concrete. But some of that water gets entrained, sort of trapped inside of the mix, and it needs to evaporate out of there. So the rule is 28 days for every inch of concrete. So if you have a 4-inch slab, then you got to wait 4 months until you can really put any flooring over the top of it. Now, it's not a structural issue. That concrete is going to get stronger and stronger, but this is just a leveling job that I've done. This has nothing to do with structure. So I could put the floor over it and have no structural issues. The issue is going to be moisture damaging the flooring. So that issue is solved because I can put a moisture barrier down. So kind of this 2mm pad, and that will keep the moisture away from I got the cheapest flooring out there, which is going to be quite susceptible to moisture damages. But don't want to do that because the moisture has to escape somewhere, and so it's going to escape out the edges of the flooring, which means it's all that moisture has to evaporate right there at the drywall, where the drywall meets the slab, and that's going to cause some mold issues, I'm sure, down there at the drywall. So don't want to do that. So I'm gonna have to wait 28 days, which is quite a while to wait. And so what do I do in the meantime? There's other tasks. First and foremost, I want to level the floor just a little bit better. You can see how dusty it is from the grinding. I can't even see the floor, 3 feet in front of me. It's going to be a lot of work to clean this up. So I should be doing this job wet, and the grinder could handle it, that wheel can handle it, but I just don't want to be flinging wet, dusty crap all over the walls that I just painted. And in fact, that might have been the wiser thing to do. Even cleaning that might be easier than cleaning this dust, and the dust is horribly toxic. You get what's called silicosis, which is an incurable lung disease from inhaling sand dust, or dust from grinding sand, dust from grinding rock. So absolutely wear your proper personal protective equipment, PPE, good respirator if you're going to be doing work like this. It's quite dangerous. Every single inch of every surface in here needs to be wiped down with a damp rag. As long as I live, I never want to grind wet concrete ever again. So I've got these vents installed, and they are firmly secured, not going anywhere. We're looking down into the office here. The other one I already have attached to the blower motor, which vents to the outside. The motor and the outside vent, and this hardware as well, was previously installed there and there, but I decided to move it to get, better circulation. So from corner to corner, we'll get some really nice airflow in the office. And this panel here controls that motor. So this is a timer if I need it to just sort of go off and on a regular schedule, or I can press the button. You can hear the problem. This motor is not quiet, and the sound from the motor is bouncing right down the vent down into the office. Now I could make this vent more serpentine, which would keep some of the noise out, but the problem is that anything you do for noise reduction also impedes airflow, and we want good air circulation. There's the ugly vent hole. Here's the vent cover that's going over it, and you can see I 3D printed the screen integrated into the print. I'll put a link in the description to how I achieved that, but yeah, you can see it's just a really basic design. Here by the window, I've already got the in air vent. This is supplying fresh air into the room, and I considered this other design. I'll show it on the screen, but in the end, I don't mind a blast of air coming straight down here. Nobody's going to be sitting in this corner and getting too cold or something like that, so it doesn't matter that the air is not sort of directed back into the room. I designed and 3D printed these ball and socket joints to make these wall-mounted studio light arms. There's a whole dedicated video. I'll put the link in the description. Using a handsaw, I cut off the normal nail mounts that would mount the electrical box here to the side of a stud, and we're just going to slide it in there and shoot some screws through this wall into the stud. You can see I just drilled a hole right there in the middle to pass wires between the two electrical boxes. I installed the original speed controller that came with the office and with that motor. So now I've got the timer here and I can turn it on, and it is currently set to the low setting. But if we listen, we'll still hear quite a bit of noise coming from the duct. So there's a resin printer, and over there are all of my other FDM printers, but if you're printing with ABS, those things create a lot of like micro particulates into the air. So if the cost of having a well-ventilated room is a little bit of noise, I think I can deal with that, and I like the fact that I have a 6-inch pipe, not just a 4-inch pipe, 6-inch pipe really just pumping the air out of here, so I don't think any of those fumes or particulates are going to make their way down to this end of the office where I'll be sitting at my desk. Down there is where all of the 3D printers are going to sit. This is a good solution functionally. It would just be nice to have it be a little quieter. So this whole video you've been listening to me talk here in the echo chamber, and I brought in these sound panels, acoustical deadening panels that I made. There's a video in the description. It was a short video, but listen to the difference. This is absolutely incredible. Just those 4 things. When I get the desk in here and the 3D printers and all that other texture to break up the sound waves, you'll hardly even hear the echo any longer. Well, I've done some experimenting, putting the panels in all different places here in the room and with the layout of like furniture and stuff like that planned. And this is by far and away the most acoustically deadening way to lay this out. Now, of course, I won't have these on the floor. They'll be up there on the ceiling, but currently, because the floor is empty, basically we're acoustically symmetrical. So putting those on the ceiling will sound the same in the room. Yeah, so this is really great. As far as the sound deadening goes. Wish I had more of these panels, but then again, I don't really have more room to hang them, so it's not such a tragedy. And all the other stuff, like the shelves and the printers and all that stuff, will have the effect of dampening more sound waves as well. I kind of love where I live. It poured rain earlier, and now we've got this mist thing going on. Listen to the cicadas. Down here on the far corner of my property, the previous owner left me some of this fill dirt. I mean, I guess you could call it gravel. It's clearly what they used to make the driveway happen. So I've got a gravel driveway. And also, there's these concrete pads. These were removed from the sidewalk, the concrete work that went around the outside of the house, which has clearly been poured anew for selling the house to me. So these must have been the ones that got removed. So let's use one of these pads and some of this dirt.
It's like right here.
I think it's going to drag back.
Look.
It's mostly installed. The disconnect box here, I need to get the fuses still, because there's a couple of fuses that weren't included that go behind this panel here, and this allows you to pull that. Yeah, there you go. That's where the fuses go right there. And there's the disconnect, so whenever you're doing maintenance on the thing, that's how you make sure that it's isolated and you're not going to electrocute yourself. And yeah, so the wiring going through the PVC conduit. These are my coolant lines. I still need to wrap them with tape. You can see they got a little bit damaged with the insulation here on the metal building, on the hole there. So yeah, not quite done. I'm waiting for my neighbor, who's an HVAC technician, to come around and vacuum out the lines and double check my work just to make sure I did it right. Got my neighbor here, just help me install it. He's slightly off camera. So what do you think? Did I do pretty good?
Not bad for a pseudo professional.
All right. Yeah, it's all working. You guys can, well, you can't even hear it.
We haven't checked the inside yet.
That's true.
Is it cooling? That's the question.
I mean, I felt some air coming off it a few minutes ago. Yeah. Is it cold? Yeah, it's cold, huh? Look at his hair blowing. All right, time for bed.
No, not almost time for bed. I just needed 2 more things for my robot. Oh, 2 more things. 2 more things, just rinse it, and then put it with electricity, and it'll be all done.
Okay, so this is the power for the robot?
Huh?
How's it work?
Well, I'll show you when I'm all done because I need to focus on this. And all I need is to generate electricity. That sucks up electricity. It's like a vacuum, but it doesn't vacuum up trash, but it sucks up electricity instead.
Huh, it's time for bed. That's why it's so dark, huh? All right, got the first row of underlayment and the first row of flooring put down. Forgive me for sounding funny. I've got a sinus infection going on, but the floor is almost done, and that's awesome. Yeah, it's going to take a little bit more effort here on this wall because I've got to notch all the panels around the posts. Now, remember that I got the absolute cheapest flooring that I could possibly find. Everything about this project has been super duper budget. So the technique for this cheap flooring is to never hammer on it directly. And basically, I start it here at the end like that. I start these 2 pieces, give it kind of a shake until that seam is nice and tight. And then I just lift up on this edge right here to just help this seam find its way home. And then just tap, tap, tap. And you can see you get a nice tight seam here, nice tight seam there. You move on to the next piece. And welcome to the studio / office. I've been dreaming of a studio like this ever since I started making YouTube videos. Yeah, this has been a long time coming. I'm so glad that I spent the time to make it happen. I was hopeful that this flooring was going to be a little stiffer, but it's pretty thin, so it's pretty flexible. So I can, as I walk, I can actually feel the divots in the floor. It's not terrible, but it's not great. Now it is perfectly level, which is awesome. So I can put this desk that I'm using as a stand to film with right now, and I can put the desk anywhere in the office and my pencil isn't going to roll off the desk. There's still more to come. I definitely have some room treatments to do. I think there's some more sound deadening that needs to happen. I'm going to have to figure that out. So ordering some of those foam tiles that stick on the wall, because this room is really echoey. Even with, these make a ton of difference. Like, they really make a difference, but it can be better. And maybe a carpet. Yeah, that's something I need. A couch maybe here, I'm thinking, for when I want to just sort of like relax for a minute when I'm not working. And of course, there's a big project coming up, the wainscoting. So stay tuned for that. It might be on the other channel. In fact, I think it's going to be, because it's a 3D printer project. But that is going to be something special. But as it stands, I'm ready to start filming, and I've got a backlog of videos. I've got at least 3 videos, maybe more like 5, that just really need to get made for the 3D printer channel. So that's what I'm going to be doing for the next couple of weeks. And for this channel, thank you so much to these Patreon supporters who keep it going. You guys are wonderful, and I love you. So have a great day. See you in the next video.